Good afternoon and welcome to JoyNews Today. With me, Sweetie Abochi. Coming up, flag bearer for Movements for Change, Kyerematen, vows to scrap the president's power of appointing ministers, as well as ensuring that his appointees declare their assets publicly. Flag bearer of the opposition, National Democratic Congress, vows to prosecute anyone found to have misappropriated the Dutch bond. Details of these stories plus business, sports and showbiz in this package. Please stay for details. For Change, Kyerematen has promised to review Article 78 of the Constitution if elected president to promote accountability. Now, this constitutional provision currently grants the head of state powers to select ministers with a majority from Parliament. But Mr. Kyerematen says this undermines their ability to effectively oversee the actions of the executive. Mr. Kyerematen also indicated that if he is elected president, he will ensure his appointees declare their assets publicly for accountability. Now, we've been joined by Courage Nobi, he's Deputy Director of Policy for Movements for Change. Courage is in studio with me. Courage, thank you for joining the program.
It's a pleasure to always join you here.
And I know this is coming from your great transformational plan. And
Absolutely.
Maybe I can say that you are the first that brought a manifesto. As far as manifestos goes, this is your plan for the country. Exactly what is the plan behind selecting or declaring assets for members of, if he's elected president, Kyerematen's ministers or cabinet members? What's the plan here?
Thank you very much. I think what the Movement for Change has done, led by Kyerematen this time, is to move away from the manifesto culture. Manifesto is basically a list of promises, but that is not what it takes to run a country. A country's development is always a result of deliberate steps. And for that to happen, you need what we call a plan. That is why the Movement for Change, led by Kyerematen, has put together what we call the Great Transformational Plan. So each word is very important. What is needed is transformation, and that transformation must be great and must be contained in a plan that has a coherent arrangement to ensure that outcome. That is what the GTP is about. So yesterday, at the press encounter, Kyerematen took time to go into it. The media had opportunity to ask every question that they wanted, both in and outside of it. Coming out of that, the plan promises reforms in public sector. Because if you check the 1992 Constitution, before its promulgation, the Constituent Assembly had two objectives. One, to have a document that ensures continuity, that's political stability over a long period of time. And two, to bring about transformation in our development. The first objective has been met. From 1992 till now, 30 plus years, democracy has been fairly stable.
Right.
The second aspect, which is a transformation of the Ghanaian economy, leading to the transformed lives of the Ghanaian people, is what has not happened. So
this is what he intends to do by appointing just 40 members. Can you really, isn't it a bit ambitious to say you want to run a whole country with 40 ministers?
It is not at all. Because if you look at the country, you must look at the population and everything and look at being effective and efficient. And that is his hallmark as Kyerematen. Every time he's been in public office, he's proven to be effective and efficient, and that is because he has integrity. So if you have the right team, you don't need 100+ ministers to administer a small country like Ghana. To that end, he's promised 40 ministers. That includes 16 regional ministers. You know, so take the 16 now, that comes to about 24 specific sector ministries, all of which has been outlined. And what he will do with that is that when you have the right set of people, on the basis of meritocracy, you definitely can administer this country to see transformation without bloated figures. What is important, though, is that instead of engaging too many people in government, create the avenue for private sector to be able to create jobs, to employ people. I think that is where the cash is, and that is what the plan states. I think
so empowering private sector. But I want us to divert a bit and focus on the youth. On the back of the International Youth Day that we just celebrated, what is the great transformational plan speaking to in terms of how you are involving the youth in the development agenda of the country and giving them a voice? There was also that Afrobarometer report that tells us that most of the young people these days, they think democracy has failed us. What is your plan in that regard?
Thank you very much. I think when a country takes up to democracy, there's what we expect, which is democratic dividends. So the democracy must yield some results, particularly for the young people who sustain the future of the country. Alan believes that and says, I see the young people are not just leaders of tomorrow, but partners in today's development. Evidence of part of that is the team that he's put together. Young people who have great ideas who have come on board. But what we want to do is that at the center of every single policy, whether it is the National Agricultural Revolution or is it the industrialization plan and everything, youth are embedded to the very core. What does Alan want to do? Young people mostly have great, fantastic ideas, but they do not have capital. So a government arrangement that allows them access to capital is what's important. So it's specific to agriculture. The National Agricultural Revolution makes room for the government to acquire land to create what we call agro parks. So if between Sweetie, Echo, and Roseland, about 5 of you decided you want to go into agriculture, what Alan is saying is that register a business so that we have a cooperative of 5 individuals. When you have registered a business, at the agro park will be government acquired land, so security of tenure is there, the land tenure problems are catered for, and then there will be tractor services, there will be managerial assistance services, there will be extension services, all at the place with irrigation and mechanization made arrangement for. So you come and say, we have capacity to produce 100 acres of onion. We give you 100 acres of onion and give you even the seed resources for it. When you have done that...
Let me interject you here, Big Courage. Now, it's very normal, I mean, usual for political actors, flag bearers to wax lyrical and, propose ambitious plans on how they intend to turn the country around, especially in an election year. Alan Kyerematen is running as an independent candidate.
Absolutely.
You need more than plans and proposals to run this country. Does he have, the manpower? Does he have the resources? And does he have access to the various positions that he needs to appoint people to in order to execute this great transformational plan that you speak about? Absolutely,
he does. And all of that is evidence in the great transformational plan. What are we talking about? 40 ministers. The Constitution says majority of whom should come from Parliament. Majority of 40 is 21. He has already promised that what we are going to run this country on is a government of national unity. There are fantastic individuals in the NPP who may not have found expression so far in the policies of the NPP.
Right.
They may have been in Parliament 2, 3, 4 terms, but they have not seen the light of day because, of course, the principles of integrity that they represent may not have found favor with the government that be or the ruling powers. He says, I'll get those 10 people.
Right.
I go to NDC, equally, fantastic people. We'll get them on board. Then outside of the political establishment, there are fantastic people in media, in academia, elsewhere, who can be part of the national transformation agenda.
So he's just going to tap resources everywhere, anywhere.
For the first time, you are going to have a government that is truly a government of national unity.
Courage Nobi, thank you so much.
On the back of that, we can bring development.
Yes, so an inclusive government. And Courage Nobi is the Deputy Director of Policy for the Movement for Change. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, away from that, still on some election stories, flag bearer of the opposition National Democratic Congress, John Mahama, says his government will prosecute anyone found to have misused or misappropriated funds from the Dachi bond, stating that NPP running mate Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh has questions to answer. Speaking during a youth forum in Ho Tuesday night, Mr. Mahama said that those found culpable will face the full rigors of the law. Let's get more details from Maxwell Akbaba. Maxwell joins us live now. Maxwell, what has the flag bearer of the NPP been saying on the back of the NDC, rather, on the back of Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh having questions to answer in terms of the Dachi bond?
Well, he said he introduced the Dachi bond to Ghana's parliament. He said, and the justification that was given for the production of it is for monies to be used to support Ghana's educational infrastructure. He said part of the argument that was made was that there was not enough money to complete, some jet fund projects and added, the various campuses without the justification, that would give it to the reduction of the Dachi bond. But he argues, the NDC Platera argues that the purpose for which the Dachi bond was introduced has not been achieved. And he believes that some funds from the Dachi bond have been appropriated and misused. So he thinks that if the NDC is elected into government in December, part of the things that we do is to do a comprehensive audit of the Dachi bond and then ensure that anyone caught in any misappropriation or misuse of the funds will be made to face the law or will be made to account. That was the point when the name of the NPP Rapid State, Dr. Matthew came up, and he said he has questions to answer. The NPP Platera says if you go to the various campuses, there's still a gap in the education infrastructure on the campuses of the various senior high schools. And he thinks that it is important for those who are in charge of that fund to be made to account.
Maxwell Agwagba, thank you for bringing us those updates and details on the back of what Mr. Mahama has been saying on the Dachi bond. Now, away from that, Member of Parliament for Nadoli Kalio, Anthony Mirikara Suma, says the opposition National Democratic Congress is a more trusted brand in the constituency than the governing New Patriotic Party. He says the NPP has nothing to show for their almost 8 years in power. He further adds that every major project in the constituency was provided for by the NDC. Rafiq Salam has the rest of the story.
Speaking at the sidelines of the launch of the Upper West Regional campaign of the NDC, the Nadolo Kaleo legislature, Anthony Mirikara Suma noted that the New Patriotic Party NPP has nothing to show in the constituency since the party took over the reins of governance over 7 years ago.
NDC is a trusted brand in Nadoli Kaleo constituency. In fact, we owe virtually all our developmental projects, social interventions that are existing in the constituency to the NDC. So they have no trump card, they have nothing to stand on to campaign. Be it schools, be it hospitals, be it water, be it employment for the youth, whatever. You can trace it to the provisions of the NDC other than the NPP.
So you think that the NPP hasn't done anything
The NPP has nothing to campaign on.
Anthony Suma alleged that the NPP is vindictive and selective in providing opportunities for the people.
So for instance, they've made provisions for fertilizer for vulnerable people. They are actually giving out to party members, party executives, NDC constituency executives, NPP constituency executives, and NPP brand executives. And these are not vulnerable people. These are not vulnerable people. We have.
Away from these election stories, let's do some other stories. Now, Keta, an ancient city, faces an environmental crisis. About 5,000 homes along its coast could be lost to the sea within the next 5 years if urgent actions are not taken to protect the rapidly eroding shoreline. While Ghana's coastline is expected to see a significant sea level rise of up to 1 meter by 2100, environmentalists highlight that Keta's coast is eroding at an African leading rate of 2 meters per year due to climate change. In part 1 of our climate focus series on vanishing shores, Carlos Caloni highlights the devastating impact of the rising sea levels on the lives and livelihoods of Keta residents.
A 2017 World Bank's report, Enhancing Resilience to Climate and Ecosystem Changes in Semi-Arid Africa, highlights that coastal dwellers in Ghana face significant threats from the rising sea levels, projected to increase by 0.3 to 1 meter by 2100. This will lead to increased flooding and coastal erosion, which will jeopardize homes, infrastructure, and livelihoods, particularly in fishing communities where over 2 million people are at risk. Keta is no exception. In 2021, the National Disaster Management Organization reported that 200+ homes were destroyed by these high tides in the Keta municipality alone, which rendered about 4,000 residents displaced.
We have a lot of the house here still come to spoil, and the summer house too still come to spoil. They have a lot of about 150 house we go on the sea inside.
This is my house, but the sea spoil them. Spoil my canoe, my everything, my 3 bedrooms, everything spoiled. But right now I sleep for outside.
Our front there, they destroyed the house, like 7 houses in my front here.
The municipal NADMO director, God knows, Blebu, tells me 2/3 of the main Keta town now has already been swallowed by the sea.
239 houses for now are affected. Some are partially collapsed, some are entirely gone, and those people living in those houses now, some left the town, some are living with their other family members, some are still living in their dilapidated houses because they have no place to go. The main Keta Central, about 2/3, is in the sea. If nothing is being done, I'm afraid about 4,000 or 5,000 houses along the coast here will be gone. In a matter of 5 years to come, all those houses will be gone.
Meanwhile, a psychologist and climate mental health researcher at the University of Ghana, Sylvia Hagan, says there is a need for comprehensive mental health and social support for those affected. She spoke with me earlier on the AM show.
Not just an environmental problem, but also a psychological problem that requires immediate attention. And we also have to look at it from that perspective.
This uncertainty you speak about, does that fall into the category of climate anxiety? And can you explain what climate anxiety really is and how it might be affecting the residents of Keta in particular?
So the issue of climate anxiety is mainly about the residents having fear of the future, their own future and that of their descendants. So they don't know what's going to happen to them, or they don't even know if this incident is going to happen to them again. So that uncertainty and that fear that they have about the future and about the incident happening again and about how their descendants are also going to live is what is mainly referred to as climate anxiety. But in terms of the mental health support, one thing that we can do for the people who have been displaced is to encourage them to be very mindful. That is, they have to be aware of the present and not think about the past, worry about the future. So they have to live in the present. And another thing too is to encourage them to have positive thoughts. So an example is when we are talking to them, we talk to them about the fact that it is true they've lost their lives and properties and their homes, but they should see hope in the fact that they are still alive. And if they have life, there's hope. So if we encourage them in that perspective, it builds that sense of hope and reduces the stress of hopelessness and helplessness. And with that, we believe that it will help reduce their stress level.
Folks, let's pause here for a quick break. We'll be right back with more news stories. Many thanks for staying with us. You're still watching JoyNews Today with me, Sweetie Abochi. Moving on, students at the Accra College of Education are calling for a total shutdown of their campus in the wake of the strike by the Colleges of Education Teachers Association of Ghana, that is CTAG, which has crossed 60 days. The students, mostly in level 100 to 300, say they have almost given up on hoping for a return of their teachers to the classroom anytime soon. They say the long period of the strike has distracted their academic activities and affected their finances, leading to majority of their colleagues going home. Let's cross over live to the Accra College of Education and speak to my colleague Kenneth Jesse, who's there for us. Kenneth, what other observations do you make on the campus?
Well, it's pretty different from the last time I was there. Today, the place looked very deserted. I spoke to an SRC executive who did inform me that since the beginning of the strike, about 60% of the students have left for their various homes. And with the students in levels 100, 200, and 300, they are calling for a shutdown of the school, because if you look at the level 100 students, for instance, they've not had any academic activities since they started school. Now, with the final year students who are in level 400, they say that they should hold on a bit. They do not want the school to shut down now because they are in their final year. They were supposed to have started exam in the third quarter or in the last quarter of this year, but due to the strike, it has delayed a bit, and they fear that if the schools are eventually shut down in the midst of the strike, it is going to further exacerbate their problems and extend the period of which they will have to stay in school. Not only is it affecting their academics, it is also affecting their finances, because a lot of them come from far away places, some from the Upper East, Upper West region. They are torn between whether staying on campus or going back, because if they go back to campus, they do not know when they will have to return. And those that are staying on campus are also running out of money. So levels 100, 200, 300 want schools to be shut. Level 400 students want schools to be open.
Okay, so just to be clear, there's no learning activity, even among students themselves, going on right now as we speak on the campuses?
No, there isn't. So there are a few students who say they can learn on their own, but majority of them are saying that they are able to learn on their own. Well, there's no situation, it can be difficult. There are a few ones that learn themselves so that they study, but most of them say they do not even know the courses they are supposed to be doing. So it becomes very difficult for them to study on their own. So that's the situation on the campus right now.
Thank you so much, Kenneth Jesse. And Kenneth is my colleague, and he's at Accra College of Education, speaking to us on the atmosphere on the back of that CTAC strike that has crossed 60 days. In other stories, the College of Education at the University of Ghana is hosting its maiden pen ceremony today, an event dedicated to celebrating and honoring 4 distinguished faculty members who've been promoted to the rank of associate professor. This initiative not only recognizes their achievement, but also aims to inspire both students and fellow faculty members to aspire to greater academic heights. Professor Isaac Kofi Baine and a member of the planning committee, Reverend Sister Dr. Florence Awuni, have been speaking to Samuel Kojo Brace.
It's more on being determined. Because it was in the way back, was it 93, that I should have been in the University of Cape Coast. A month to reopen the university, I got involved in an accident, and I ran very well with my right hand. I lost it. I was in the university, I was on the hospital bed at Kyerematen Hospital, where my colleagues went to school. I had to stay home for 3 solid years before going back in 96 to University of Cape Coast. Wow. I completed, came down, trained as a professional teacher, educational foundations, with economics and history as my teaching subjects. I came to Accra, taught a year at St. Anthony School. Then I said no, with encouragement from friends, a very good friend of mine, DCOP retired, and the Sinfosuaka Domod Aluminium Company, Mr. Samuel Kofi, and my late friend, Mr. Kingsley Tre. So, oh, you can do more than the first degree. Go back and get a master's done. Went back and read adult education with specialization in community development. I worked hard at it, and so within 2 years I was done. For PhD, I was frustrated for 3 years, but I kept knocking doors. After 3 years, the door got open for me, got on board. Within 3 years, I was done with PhD. Wow. I was told the following year, they need me, they need my service. I went and started working with them. And by His grace, that's where I found myself. And the determination and, in fact, the the goal is to get the full professional status in the shortest possible time.
Wow.
And at least serve as a role model to the younger ones, especially to my community where, you know, Galamsey Gold, people don't take to formal education. They think the money is there, why do I go and waste my time? But at least with the small success achieved chalk somewhere, they will look up to it and also aspire and get to higher heights.
The country.
Once you apply yourself for something and you believe in it, you will achieve.
Okay.
That is one thing, and that is an advantage we have in our College of Education. We have a leader, Professor Samuel Ni Adekuju, who is ready to reward every effort made by either the students, staff, or faculty. So he has brought in so many initiatives that is helping us to aspire to be better than whatever we have at the moment. We've done so many things. We even had sport activities sometimes ago among the colleges affiliated to the University of Ghana and our own College of Education at University of Ghana. It was the first of its kind.
Okay.
It's not something that have been happening before. So every little effort anyone make in the school day and the college is appreciated. So our students should be encouraged that we need them when they complete their first degree, they should continue to the master's level, where after that they should move on to PhD. We are doing all this for them.
Now, sponsors of the anti-LGBTQ+ bill say a nominee of President Akufo-Addo to the Supreme Court, Professor Richard Frimpong-Opong, is a threat to their bill. The nominee came under intense questioning following an article that he had written advocating for the rights of same-sex couples to be respected and protected. NDC MP for South Dai, Nelson Dapiamakbo, at the appointment committee, suggested that the nominee will likely seek to outlaw their bill if he gets to the Supreme Court, a position the nominee, Professor Richard Frimpong-Opong, strongly rejected. And we'll bring you that story in a subsequent bulletin. But right now, we'll break and we'll return with business stories.
It's time for business on JoyNews Today. My name is Winston Taki, and now to our first business story. Inflation for the month of July has declined sharply to 20.9%. This represents a decline of 1.9 percentage points from that of the month of June, which was at 22.8%. According to the Ghana government statistician, food inflation decreased to 21.5%, while non-food inflation also decreased to 20.5%. Government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina Enim, addressing the press, indicated that the inflation on imported items declined to 15.6% from 17.5%. There is more in the following report.
We disaggregate July 2024 rate of inflation from a food inflation and non-food inflation perspective, and also from a locally produced item perspective and imported item perspective. In the month of July 2024, we recorded a 1.0 percentage point difference between food inflation, which stood at 21.5%, relative to 20.5% for non-food inflation for the month of July 2024, culminating in a 1.0 percentage point difference between food and non-food inflation for the month of July 2024. We have recorded a 2.5 percentage point drop from a food inflation perspective, as in the month of June 2024, food inflation stood at 24.0 relative to 21.5 for the month of July 2024, indicating a 2.5 percentage point drop from a food inflation perspective. From a non-food inflation perspective, we see a corresponding drop of 1.1 percentage points between June non-food inflation of 21.6% and July non-food inflation of 20.5%, culminating in the 1.1 percentage point drop from a non-food inflation perspective. On a month-on-month perspective, food inflation recorded a relatively lower rate of 1.7%, indicating a 0.7 percentage point difference between food and non-food inflation from a month-on-month perspective. Non-food inflation stood at 2.4% and food inflation on a month-on-month basis 1.7%. Inflation from a locally produced item and an imported item perspective recorded a 7.7 percentage point difference, with locally produced items recording a relatively higher rate of inflation of 23.3% relative to 15.6% for inflation on imported items. We focus on food and non-food inflation from a year-on-year basis, and we look at this from food inflation perspective July 2024 and non-food inflation perspective for July 2024. Again, from a food inflation perspective, we see that the rate of inflation is about 2.4 times lower than the rate that was recorded over the 12-month calendar period. In August 2023, rate of food inflation was 51.9% relative to 21.5% for the month of July 2024, culminating in about 2.5 times difference in the rate of inflation over the 12-month period, that is August 2023 and July 2024.
Now, moving on, the prices of petroleum products are likely to decrease from the middle of this month. That is, if the city's recent good run is sustained. There is more in the following report.
The city's performance has been one of the major drivers of fuel prices at the pumps over the past 3 months, with fresh data from the banks showing that the rate of depreciation has slowed significantly at the end of last month. That should bring some relief to consumers. This is because the city's rate of depreciation slowed to 4% in June from the over 7% in May. The rate of depreciation ending July is just pegged around 1%. The local currency has been fairly stable against the dollar in the first week. But for some, if this trend continues, that should be seen as good for consumers of petroleum products, as it could force the oil marketing firms to reduce prices again. Another development that should get us excited is that despite the threat of war in the Middle East, that has not impacted on crude prices. Meanwhile, the Bank of Ghana is today expected to sell some $20 million to bulk oil importers of the petroleum products. This could also go a long way to deal with supply challenges, which has impacted on the performance of the city.
That'll be all for business here on JoyNews Today. We'll be back with entertainment and sports after this break. Stay tuned.
Let's do sports now on JN Today with me, Haruna Mubarak. Now, independent presidential aspirant Alan Kyerematen has criticized the government's approach to sport development, calling it wrong. This follows the country's unfortunate performance at the just-ended Olympic Games, where all 8 athletes did not qualify for the finals in the 3 events they participated in. Alan vows to place the private sector in charge of sports development to ensure future successes if elected.
What the GTP is saying is that government has the wrong approach, has the wrong business model with sports. If government thinks that they can use government budget to develop sports, it ain't gonna happen. That is why if you read through the sports section, it's all about government empowering the private sector to establish sports academies and sports infrastructure and facilities of the highest standard. If a private person is investing, he will make sure that he does it very well, and he will maintain them. And he knows that he's also going to benefit from them. If you don't have world-class infrastructure in sports, you can't develop world-class sportsmen. I think it goes without saying. It's because if you don't have the right infrastructure, it requires the power from the Almighty God and His grace to be able to pull somebody through Olympics. But if you have the right facilities, even average performing talent can excel because of the... Recently, when we built this swimming facility, you can see that gradually we are now in a position to nurse talents in. So, Fireman, it is all about government supporting the private sector to invest in world-class sports facilities.
Let's do some other stories. Gospel music fans in Ghana are about to be blessed with a heavenly experience this weekend as the legendary Kirk Franklin and the award-winning Maverick City Music bring their Kingdom World Tour 2024 to Accra. With their amazing sounds and powerful messages, this event promises to be a divine moment in Ghana's gospel music industry. My colleague, your usual entertainment anchor Jacqueline Ansomayeboa, has more in this report.
The ICGC Christ Temple East on Teshi Rasta Road will be the epicenter of gospel greatness as Kirk Franklin, the revolutionary force behind hits like I Smile and Imagine Me, makes his highly anticipated return to Ghana. Franklin, who is performing in Accra for the first time since 2013, has a reputation for pushing boundaries of gospel music, creating an irresistible blend of faith and funk that resonates with audience of all ages.
My brothers and sisters in Accra, Ghana, this is your boy Kirk Franklin. Please join me, Tim Godfrey, Naomi Raines, Todd Galbraith, and Chandler Moore as we bring to you the Kingdom World Tour. Before we get there, I want to know, is there anything we can be praying for? Can we be praying for your family, your community? Because we want to touch heaven on your behalf.
Joining him is Maverick City Music, the contemporary worship group that has captured the hearts of gospel lovers worldwide. Well, interestingly, Spotify data reveals that Ghanaians aged 18 to 24 are the biggest fans of Maverick City Music, and Kirk Franklin accounting for nearly half of all streams in the country.
My colleague Jacqueline Ansomayeboa is currently at the ICGC Christ Temple in Teshi, where a press conference is underway about the upcoming events. Jacqueline, what can you report?
Well, Sweetie, so construction has already kick-started ahead of the event on Sunday, which is at 3 p.m. The stage setup is massive. Here, just as you can see behind, work is still ongoing at the ICGC Temple. It looks like a huge one, and they're expecting a lot of crowd to be here on Sunday.
Jacqueline, talk to us about the decision to bring Maverick City and Kirk Franklin to Ghana. What's the X factor?
Okay, well, Kirk and the whole team believes that this will be a perfect avenue for the local artists to, that is, market their craft and collaborate with these musicians. And you know, most of the times there's this conversation where they say that the gospel artists are not able to reach the larger audience, that is the global audience. And so they believe that putting this big program out there would be a platform for the gospel musicians, that is Joe Mettle, Luigi McLean, Team Eternity, and many more, to advertise themselves.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and I'll miss our walkout outro with you. All right, so that's how we're wrapping up for JoyNews Today. My name is Sweetie Abochi. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com to keep yourself updated. My name is Sweetie Abochi. We're back on your screens tomorrow with more news. Bye for now.